Welcome to From the Pages of AFJ, where we sit down with hoof care experts who appear in the magazine to dig deeper into the topics and answer your questions. I'm Jeff Cota, lead content editor of American Farriers Journal. In this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with farriers Laura Gillespie and Mike Hayward. Laura is a certified journeyman farrier and an APF 1 from Athens, Georgia. I'm sorry, that's Athens, Alabama, isn't it? She specializes in therapeutic hoof care and shoes English sport horses, dressage horses, as well as reiners and fox hunters. Mike is an APF 1 from Morgan Hill, California. He specializes in therapeutic hoof care and shoes dressage horses, hunters, and jumpers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
Before we get into the discussion, we encourage the audience to jump into the Q&A field to submit your questions for Laura and Mike, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. In the last 4 issues, AFJ published an interesting series of articles authored by Laura and Mike that highlight a specific shoe and details the various ways that farriers can achieve that benefit. So, for example, the first installment was a side bone shoe, and the article explains how it reduces leverage and allows sinking into the substrate on the side that it's affected. And since then, you've written about frog support, Z-bars, and a suspensory shoe. But before we jump into the specific shoes, the articles are adapted from a presentation that you both gave at the Australian Farrier Conference. And Laura, where did you and Mike come up with the idea to discuss these topics?
We came up with that for when we went to Australia for their first conference. We saw that there was you go to the store to get their shoes or nails or whatever like that, and they had a really limited supply and what they could get. And so we started thinking hey, if we were to offer them okay, you can do a side bones or a suspensory shoe, and you add up just a simple castle pad or whatever kind of pad, right, to it, and you cut it out this way, or you draw your, branch out this way, and that will help you technically to be able to achieve this shoe without having to have the materials that we have in the States technically. And so we talked about that. I was like, yeah, we really need to, be able to help them with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we live in such a great world that it's, the vet wants this shoe or that shoe, and we can just go, all right, fine, I'll order it.
Right.
If you don't want to make it, then we just order it. But they don't have that option because shipping is going to take 4 to 8 months to get there if they get it. So it's you've got to be able to achieve the same result by doing it in different ways. And that's what it's we spent a lot of time with Wes, and we went out shoeing with him, and he took us to his farrier supply places. And I've got more supplies inside my own personal supply room, I guess, than
or is it text or
store.
Yeah.
So it was well, what do you do if you have this? And it's I don't know, because we can't buy it. So
Right.
There's other ways to do it. So
Right, other ways to achieve that, right?
And it was amazing to go to a country as big as Australia and seeing the difficulties that they have, and just we're I think we can make a little bit of a difference. And then we realized that it wasn't just going to be about Australia. It applies to everybody. Somebody just out of school,
right?
Somebody, because you're not going to, if you're straight out of school, you're not going to be able to afford to buy those nice shiny shoes. So
Exactly.
You need different ways to achieve the same thing. And I think
you had time in the forge yet.
Yeah.
Right, and that kind of dovetails into the next question. There are a lot of considerations that a farrier must make before attempting any of these applications, and because these applications don't necessarily work for every client, horse, or even farrier. So, can you run down what some of those considerations are? Go ahead.
So,
or Laura.
Yeah, Mike. No, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was waiting for you.
I was waiting for you. What would be your biggest consideration?
My biggest consideration. Honestly, as we were going through this, like footing was
Yeah, that was actually a huge one, wasn't it? The footing from Florida to California and to the East Coast. That was a big, huge thing.
Yeah, like the problems that, like, it's been interesting, like working with Laura on this, like East Coast, West Coast, like the gang sign, but the conditions that I have out here are dry. And what Laura has most time is wet, damp, muddy rain and stuff. Like we haven't had rain in California for ever, like probably 8 months. So all of our horses out here are living in basically dry lots. The only time they ever have anything squished inside their foot is when they're inside the stall and they have the shavings. So if a horse lives in a dry lot, it doesn't matter what shoe you're going to put on that foot. The mechanics of the shoe is going to make no difference whatsoever. Whereas Laura is going to be in softer footing, so she has to consider it more. So more of my applications would be horses that they have an issue and they're still working, because that way they're in arenas with soft footing. But if it's a backyard horse that's just in a dry lot, it's just a matter of time. The mechanics really won't make that much of a difference.
And also the footing, like say you're rehabbing a suspensory horse, right? And you're in the, like say the Olympic footing, right? Or the Tony Judge footing, or like we took into consideration the footings in Wellington, the footings at Spruce Meadows, the footing at out in Thermal, like that, all that stuff we took into consideration as far as doing some of the rehab, right?
Yeah, and each one is like slightly different.
Right.
I'd say like the California footings are definitely like still a lot harder than what yours are.
Absolutely. And they do a lot of, like silicone based sand here. So it's really sticky as well.
Yeah, well, we don't have quite so much of that.
No. You in California have better footing than we do.
No.
And another thing that is a consideration is the price. Not all clients are going to be willing to or be able to afford some of these.
Absolutely. And like me and Lauren talked about that this morning. It's like I can ask a client, I can say, oh, look, well, we can buy this shoe. It's going to be like $50, $60, $80. And it's out of their price range, where instead we can achieve it by a different way. Either we make it, or we apply a pad in a certain way, or we weld something, and there's different price sets. And I think it also, typically on these cases, you're working together with vets, and you can give the vet an option of like, okay, so here's what we want to achieve mainly and foremostly, like, because we want to set goals and then be like, okay, this is what we want to do now, this is what we're looking for in the future, and this is the result that we want to have. So you can offer the vet 3 or 4 different ways to achieve the same thing. And between the client, the vet, and the farrier, between a price point, and it's like, okay, well, this shoe may give us the best outcome, but it's out of your price range. Okay, well, we can come down a price range and we can offer you this, this, or this. You can offer it to the vet, and the vet can choose which one she would like. And then you can go from there and present it to the client as a whole team approach. But it doesn't.
A good package, yeah.
And then also that sort of translates to not only might be the best for a particular horse, but the skill set, as you kind of mentioned earlier, alluded to earlier, a farrier who might be out of farrier school, or even in a situation where the farrier is 2-3 years out of school, might not have the same education level or skill level to make a side bone or a Z-bar.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's also kind of is like, as your education grows, your price point goes up with that, and then you have the better skills, better things. And I think if you're more skilled, you should get more paid. It's the same in any trade.
You charge more, so you have better shoes in your arsenal, technically. More shoes. and more skill.
Right. Absolutely.
Like somebody straight out of school typically isn't going to be able to like hand make a heart bar or have the money to put a welder in their truck, or
right.
It's just.
Or, sometimes we go to places, like sometimes you end up at a place in the mountains somewhere where it's like, I got no power, so I have to hand make, or I got to kind of, or I'm out of propane. I ran out of propane today, but I still have to go to this stop. So I have to, figure out some way to make this horse comfortable. I know this horse needs this. So I need to cut this pad in a certain way, or I need to whatever, with my, or weld something, with my forge. And that's what I got to do to make this horse happy.
Absolutely. And sometimes you get a call from a client, and you're already out, might be an emergency or whatever. And you get out there, you don't know exactly what you're expecting or what to expect. And you might not have bar stock available.
Right.
So, let's see what I have to do to do this particular application.
What shoe do I have to cut with a hacksaw to make this work and forge weld it? Technically, yes. Yes, I think we've all been there, honestly.
Yeah.
This, as long as you have flux or borax or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Now, there are other therapeutic shoes and applications that are coming up in future issues. But this type of project is labor intensive. And it could have been even more so if you had to make each of the applications for the not only for the presentation, but for the article for illustrative purposes. So to speed up the process, you received a lot of help from others in the industry, didn't you?
Oh my God, we got so much help with this. Like, I mean, and amazing guys. Like Steve Krause was amazing. Like some of his stuff he turned in. Pat Brodus. Like, who else, Mike? Did you get? Like you had Curtis. Farley,
Westman, Curtis, Tim, Cable, like
we talked to so many farriers that were like so like ingenious. Like some of the stuff they came up with was so ingenious. We were like, oh my goodness, like this is wow. Like you just like you figure this out on the job, Yeah,
I feel like we're like very fortunate to like those pretty cool people like
that are like think out of the box all the time,
Yeah. And the industry's so giving. They're so generous with their time and their knowledge that they're willing to help you do this and take time out of their busy schedule to help you.
Like the original thought kind of came from when I was in horseshoeing school at Pacific Coast Horseshoeing. Like Bob Smith did like a lecture on kind of what we touched. And I was like, we could like really like go with this. Mm-hmm. Like it was it helped me at the beginning of my career. And it was like, well, it's still helping me today. So let's like expand on it. And then once we started to get into it, we didn't realize how absolutely huge it was. Yeah. And we were working on it for ever. It felt like.
Well, and we keep contributing, like we keep thinking about shoes and we still spitball and like, hey, like this guy sent me this shoe or I saw this shoe, like it's kind of brilliant, And so it's still a work in progress technically. But like Pat Brodus' shoe was the most beautiful shoe. Like his Z-Bar shoe that he sent to us was like, holy crap. Like that is a gorgeous shoe that nobody, like besides Pat, I don't know who else can make that shoe, but that is like the most beautiful shoe. It's beautiful. I want to hang it on the wall.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, since Laura singled out Pat, is there someone or a shoe that you saw that just really stopped you in your tracks, whether it's the craftsmanship or the ingenuity of the application itself?
It was so interesting. We went to Australia the first time, and we didn't do our lecture till our second trip to the Australian Farriers Conference. And while we were there doing our lecture, we're throwing it out there. It's like, look, if anybody has anything that they've done, like, please let us know. And like, the lecture before us was, Laura?
I don't remember. I was so stressed out.
Um, it was who did the lecture? Oh, the super nice guy, Ken.
That was the guy from Tokyo, freaking brilliant guy. He was the Olympic farriers, like for this last Olympics. Like he was brilliant in what he told us.
And so in part of his lecture, he had a hospital play like we've never seen before, and it was absolutely genius. So his hospital play consisted of an acrylic or
it's like fiberglass that you can see through, right?
It was like a see-through plastic. So he made his hospital plate out of a see-through plastic that apparently has to be 10 millimeters, or else it'll crack. But it was genius because it's like a hospital plate, but you can actually like see through and see the bottom of the foot. And they work in a lot of conditions where monsoons and like whatever else. So they need to kind of like know how much dirt and water is being put underneath that pad. And so, yeah, like a see-through hospital plate, like how helpful could that be? Like that was like so cool. And that's in a country where they have less stuff than Australia. They don't have the rigs like us, the shoes like us, anything like us. But yet, thinking outside of the box, it's like a see-through hospital plate. It's like genius.
Where do you even find an acrylic that you can see through for something like this?
I think he used fiberglass, right?
Was it? Went to a hardware store or something? And
no, seriously, that's where he got it from. So
that's amazing.
It was like a plexiglass. It was plexiglass, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a plexiglass that he cut out for that because that's what he could get, and he wanted to be able to see through to see what he was doing. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That's
amazing. So genius. And if we hadn't met him at the conference, then we never would have known about it. And we were like, oh my goodness, we need this. Like now, then go back to the room and like add all this stuff to our like lecture. Because I was like, send me that. I need it. I've yet to try it, but I totally see there's a place for it.
Absolutely. That's cool. That's cool. And just a reminder, feel free to add ask any questions that you might have in the Q&A field at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able to shoot some over to Mike and Laura as we continue this session. One of the great things about this series, aside from the different techniques, the various tips you've included, and the one that was particularly interesting to me was Laura's use of the low density pad. What is a low density pad, and how do you use it? What's its purpose?
So I can tell you though, I have little index cards here, so I'm going to cheat up this, but technically it is a dispersed molecular structure. So instead of being like a crystalline type structure where the energy goes completely through, the molecules are actually dispersed throughout the pad. So it's when you compress it, it bounces throughout the pad, if that makes sense, right? So it's how to explain it? The only way, I need to bring some because, to show to people, because when you drive a nail through it, you don't feel the concussion back in your hands, at all. That's the coolest thing about this pad. And
you don't need to drill holes to nail into it.
You don't. You can drive through. It's like butter.
Yeah, like a performance pad.
Like butter. Wow.
But with these pads,
Mike has a bunch.
No, it's awesome.
And it's like the concussion that it absorbs, right? And we pack it with do you pack it with anything? You use dental impression more than I do because you have a lot harder feet. But I'll use soft Equipack and such. What's that?
Yeah, I either use dental or magic, sometimes Equipack. But depending what the horse's problem is, depending on what I pack it with.
And it really absorbs, it seems to, from what I've heard, and it's light enough for hunters to use, which is nice too. Bless you. It's light enough for hunters to use so it doesn't affect their movement too much. In jumpers, it's, with the concussion, regardless of the footing, whether you're going from California to Florida to wherever else up to New Jersey, it's not going to, it's going to protect your performance, let's say, for the different footings if you don't change shoes through those 3 shows.
And it's pretty interesting because like you can hold up, say, a hard plastic pad and you can hit it with a hammer, and it's like you can hear like a tink.
Mhm.
Right.
With these pads, you can hold it up, you can hit it with a hammer, and it's like thud.
And you don't feel it reverberate back into your hand.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing to me. And that's why I'm like, when a horse lands at, that presentation we did in at Epona, I think it was, right? Remember that thing we did at Epona, the guy that did the hydraulic, like, and his brother was a big show jumper in Italy. And so he did when the horse landed, the pounds per square inch on whatever footing they were using in Italy at the time. I remember it. And it was like freaking like over a ton of pressure per when he landed. And so my figuring, like, if we have a horse that we can reduce that by, let's say 40 to 60%, don't know exactly because we haven't used this pad on this particular test, but how amazing would that be when a horse doesn't have like the osteophytes in the coffin bone, or things that get like, the remodeling in the coffin bone that happens after jumping for years and years on that kind of footing in that kind of environment.
It's amazing. Where do you find this pad?
So this pad I get from a guy out of Texas, and it was actually a farrier in Texas that first came up with it. And they kind of got a little bit lost through just time and everything like that. But it's johnsonhoofsolution.com, and that's where I get it from technically. And he has hoof stuff, and he's from like Houston area, so it's like that swamp kind of country or whatever like that. But he's been using these pads for about 20 years, I would say. And it's a trainer and a farrier that came up with this technically.
I see. Now you had one particularly lame horse that was in a low density pad. Tell us a little bit about that story, because that's fascinating.
So that horse presented as this has been a while, but he had this horse really liked to screw around in his paddock area, let's say, and the farrier came before a Grand Prix that he was supposed to jump, and put the shoes and the pads on. And because he'd been off for some reason, we hadn't had pads on for like the one cycle. Farrier came with the pads on, and he technically jumped the Grand Prix, came back. He's a little bit off. The trainer told me, he's like, he's a little bit off. I'm not sure why. He's a little bit off. I'm not sure why. Like, asked a bunch of trainers, and it came about. The vet was coming out the next day after the Grand Prix, and so he X-rayed him. Horse had a sagittal fracture of the coffin bone. It was like literally looked like a piece of pie cut out, right? So, anyhow, the horse ended up being in a bar shoe and that pad, and was able to, after 12 weeks of rehab, I think it was, pad, bar shoe, was able to go back into full work technically, and actually did Grand Prix the next year as well.
Wow.
In the pads. It was a really cool thing, and soft Decapac, not hard or anything like that under the pad. Like, cause I was like, well, we definitely don't want any pressure on that. So we did a really soft material under the pad.
That's cool. That's fascinating. Is there a tip that you came away with while preparing the project that has changed the way you shoot besides the hospital plate, the see-through hospital plate?
I think for every shoe we learned something new. I think there wasn't one shoe that we covered that we didn't think, oh my goodness, that's genius.
We did. I mean,
yeah, like, it's definitely just doing this project. Like, not only did we like have a lot of fun, but I think it just expanded our toolbox like so much. It gave
our appreciation for so many farriers too, right? Like, how many farriers did we talk to that were like, they're so like, they're so amazing what they've come up with and the ingenuity and everything like that. Like, I mean, guys came up with stuff just because they had to in the moment, and the way that they came up with this stuff was it was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there one in particular that you can think of that says, wow, that was, you kind of did it with you kind of already answered this question with the see-through, but is there one in particular that you said, wow, this is just amazing?
I definitely did it with Pat's shoe. Pat's shoe, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Broda sent some amazing pictures and case studies that like blew us away. It was like wow, that was like
wow, we can't even. No, we're not building that. I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah. Some of his shoes were they're works of art. They're so smooth, and I mean, just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, 100%.
That was the one that sticks out in my mind, because I was like, Mike, we can't, like, there's no competition with this Z bar. Like,
Yeah, I think Pat and his dad were the only ones who could.
A good example. It's also a good example of, like, if you can't make it, there are like other ways to achieve it.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you can make it and charge a lot of money for it, because it's probably unless you do them all the time, it's going to take you a lot of time. But yeah.
And we want it to be like everybody can achieve the same, like, you need to make a suspensory shoe. How do I do it with a pad and just like simple forging?
And at the end of the day, we're all doing this for the benefit of the horse. That's what it comes down to. And if you can make a Broda shoe, then here's some other options that maybe they work just as well, or maybe not quite as well. But here's some options. Like, you should strive to make a shoe like that.
Right. And understand the mechanics of what the horse needs and what footing that you're in, right?
Yeah. Like,
are you in California desert, or are you in Louisiana swamp? Florida swamp.
Right. Yeah. And I should back up. I should explain this better earlier. The way that we had this set up is we have each shoe designated, or each alternate, each shoe or application, so that we break it down in the article where if you have a specific skill set for this particular application, it's rated between 1 and 3, and we have a little icon with a mortarboard with someone that looks like a graduate. And then for the prices, 1 through 3 or 4 dollar signs, and so on and so forth. So that way it makes it easier for the reader and the audience to be able to see exactly where you are in terms of those particular subsets of indicators, what it takes to make this particular shoe and the various alternatives.
Mm-hmm. And that was Mike's idea. That was a super brilliant idea. I thought, like, Mike came up with that whole system. He's like, we need to break it down to be where you can buy the shoe from, Grand Circuit, or you can make it out of, 18, 20 inches of bar stock or whatever, like he's the one that came up for that.
That's a great idea. Great job, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah, right. Good job, Mike. Yep.
And you both have used a lot of these shoes, but of those that have been featured in the magazine so far, which ones have you had the greatest success with, and why?
Myself, or you go, Mike.
Well, we did actually come up with our own shoe.
We did.
We did?
Yeah.
Which shoe?
The one that we got designed.
Which one?
The negative palmar angle and hind feet.
Oh, the Grand Circuit shoe. I forgot.
However, apart from that one, that might be a future thing we talk about.
Yeah. But that was a good shoe. Yay, Grand Circuit.
We needed a shoe for negative palmar angles in hind feet. We had success using a certain shoe in front feet, but they didn't make it on the hind feet. So between us, in order for them, the company that we went to, in order for them to produce the shoe, you had to order so many shoes. So we spent a lot of money and got these shoes made for us, but now we can order them whenever we want. So, which is kind of cool.
And the heart bar thing, actually, that was it was Jonathan's presentation at the summit like a couple of years ago or whatever that he did with the 2 degrees Pomerango raise and the heart bars. Like that was a big thing for me. And so when we did the Z bar and the heart bar for the hind feet and all that kind of stuff, like that was pretty cool for me to experiment with that on hind feet.
Yeah, I think the suspensory shoe is one of the ones that I use most commonly, or the asymmetrical shoe, like the collateral shoe. I think those are probably the 2 that I use like the most, just in like a week in, week out kind of thing, because that's probably what we see more of typically.
Out there, you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably suspensory and collateral shoes.
Suspensory injuries are getting more and more prolific, I think.
Oh, I've
seen that too.
I think because the season's getting longer and longer and horses don't get that amount of time off they used to.
Correct. And then when you want the horses to have, like, they need to have a couple months off. They're not going to, because they're going to the next.
Yeah,
show.
or they're not warmed up properly, because it's like, okay, here we go, next show. We have to get through all of these horses, and more people, recently more people I think are buying a lot more horses.
Yeah.
Which
they're burning out faster.
Yeah.
What can you do to make sure that they get the warm-up times and things like that? Is there anything that a farrier can do as far as talking with a client, and then therefore they can then go to the trainer or the owner or something like that to raise awareness with competitors?
We would like to think so.
Yeah.
We would like to think so.
Yeah, it depends on the trainers and the trainers' assistants, and that's a.
The thing with social media, right? That's what's killing us right now, right? Social media is killing us because people want instant results all the time, right now. Horse has to be sound now to go to this show tomorrow, right? It's like, we can't do that. We can't accomplish that. We have, we need 6 weeks. We still need the old amount of time off that the horse used to have before social media says, or, before instant everything. And that, well, we need it done tomorrow. Well, we can't make this horse sound by tomorrow. Like, sorry. I don't care if it's a $250,000 horse or a $5,000 horse. We can't make it sound by tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think the key is with that is just being upfront and honest with your clientele, and just being like, look, we have this injury. It's going to take this amount of months. It's going to take this injury. It's going to take this amount of months. Like being as open and honest with your clientele as possible. Sometimes it's not what they want to hear, but you're not going to go to a barn and say, "Oh, I can fix that." Like,
no.
Right.
Like, no.
Even in a British accent, you can't do that.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
There's just no substitute for time off and rest and proper riding as well.
Right. Of the shoes that we've had in the magazine so far, which ones have you struggled with most in line?
Yeah, none really, because I think there's so many different choices to achieve the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That we've kind of made it easier on ourselves, because if we're not comfortable with like hand making something or buying it and having to deal with the you can buy a shoe, but how many times does it really like fit a foot? Like, sometimes when you buy a shoe, you spend so long trying to shape it to achieve what you need to think, then you've just wasted all your time, or you've like not paid attention and it's like melted away or something. But yeah, I think we've given ourselves like lots of different things on the scale of like easy to hard, there's lots of different ways to show a cat, right? That's the whole premise of everything.
Well, everybody struggles with heart bars, right? Would you feel like everybody or a lot of farriers struggle with heart bars because it's like an intimidating shoe, but it's, frog support is intimidating, but if you do it correctly, and like my favorite one was what I learned from Mike over this process, let's say, was when you took the graduated shoe, the Jim Burton graduated shoe, right? And then you put the Equipack on it. The super fast on it. And then I did that actually after you did that. And I'm like, because I needed this horse, I needed more frog support, but I wasn't sure how much. So I add super fast to it. And then I ground it off to get where the horse was comfortable to, to get the proper amount of frog pressure. That was actually a cool thing.
So I drilled a couple of holes in the frog plate, countersunk them, and then I built up the frog. I put like one part of like Play-Doh or like whatever around the frog, and then put in the super fast on the frog plate. And then with that, I added maybe, I don't know, it was like a quarter of an inch, half an inch, maybe like whatever. And so when I wanted the desired amount of pressure, then I could just grind off the super fast.
Which you wanted.
And
you grinded it from the tip of the frog or to the caudal part. Like you could grind it wherever you wanted it.
Yeah, so I just keep grinding until I had the amount of pressure that I thought was good, and then I could two-nail, set the foot down. If the horse didn't like it, I can take it off. I can grind off a little bit more. I can two-nail using the same nail holes, see if the horse likes it, and find a happy medium. And it's like an adjustable heart bar, but because you can always add.
That was brilliant. Yeah. It more super fast, grind it off like wherever you want it to be. You need a little bit more because you have too much space, or whatever. I thought that was good.
I think that one's coming up probably. I don't know. You need to subscribe to the Farriers Journal so you can find out about that.
No, that one was many options of creating frog support, Mike. Like it was already in there.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember which one it was, but but thanks for the plug. I appreciate that.
May June. That was May June, Mike.
Okay, good job, Laura. I started.
There are 5 other applications that are coming up in the future issues, not necessarily in this particular order, but the collateral shoe, hospital plate, onion, bank robber, and the light rail omnidirectional. Is there one that you find particularly helpful or dread that when you have to?
I think me and Laura can both agree with this one. With the omnidirectional, like that's something I dread. That Laura loves it, so we're on different levels.
That should be the finale because that's going to be the most controversial show. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the least I had to do with any of this. So
Mike was the bank robber. I was like, you know what? And then the other day I had to put literally a reverse shoe with frog support on a horse. I'm like, it's the first time I've ever done this, even after all of our articles and everything. I'm like, never done a backward shoe. I cut like the toe out of an egg bar and then like put a little frog plate in. I'm like, this is like Mike all the way. I can't believe I'm doing this shoe right now. And it worked. It was beautiful. It was what the horse wanted.
I had to do one a couple of weeks ago on a founded tiny little pony. It wasn't, I guess it was kind of a mini, and it was like a 6-or. There's like those little shoes that you give out to kids. I put it on backwards and it was like perfect. I two-nailed it, and that was all I got. And it came on.
And I liked it. It was a chronic founder case, and I was like, where the coffin bone is like literally disintegrated, and I've tried everything, like from hell to breakfast, to get this thing like a little bit happy. And I'm like, all right. I told him, like, this is the left. He's like, well, if we can't get this sound this time, then we're putting this horse down. Like, well, or not sound, but just able to walk around the pasture and eat. Well, all right. Well, this is the only thing I haven't tried. So why don't we do this? Guess what? Horse loved it, and it's been like just walking around super happy. So kudos, Mike, for the bank robber show.
You just got to remember to stamp the other side of the shoe because it gets confusing.
Whatevs.
Well, what is it about the omnidirectional that you don't like, Mike?
I honestly, Laura definitely has the like advantage from doing those
things.
from obviously doing them a lot more. But it's not really a California thing. It's there's not a lot of guys doing them like out in California, like Shane maybe. And yeah, it's just not as common as like East Coast.
Well, it's more like you don't need it because you don't have the feet for it. Like you literally don't have the issues with the feet, right? Because you have you still are dealing with the hard desert feet. So it doesn't, what good does it do you to do that when you don't have the feet that are spread out and really super thin sole, you know what I mean? And you need to break that leverage at whatever point the leverage is presented, right?
Right. And then also you go into that, like the school thing that you went to like 2 years ago.
Dr. Redden thing.
Yeah. That like super helped you to get like an awesome understanding.
That was cool in the conference, right? That Dr. Pollitt was there, remember? Because then we had to do the venogram. Remember, I was like, because I had the question of like, how do you know that omnidirectional rail shoe will like increase blood flow? Because that was something that I said in that lecture, remember? Yeah. So that was a huge thing. So I like talked to
right there, like second row was like Chris Pollitt.
Exactly. That was the thing with that one. That made me really nervous. I'm like, well, I got to prove this now. So I did. And thankfully to a guy that graduated Cornell that wrote his thesis on the venogram. It was perfect. And credit to Dr. Pollitt on that. Yeah. Anyways, that was a really stressful show.
Well, this has been a great conversation about the series, and we're looking forward to the future installments also. So thank you very much for joining us, Mike and Laura. For American Farriers Journal, Laura Gillespie and Mike Hayward, thank you very much for watching.
Absolutely. Thank you.